Hello, everyone. How's everybody doing? I am doing great. As promised, I told you that I would be back on my personal account to continue the conversations that I used to have on the digital magazines account. Hello, everyone. How's everybody doing? I am doing great. As promised, I told you that I would be back on my personal account to continue the conversations that I used to have on the digital magazines account. I found that having these conversations and connecting with people from all over the world is actually something that I truly enjoy and that brings me happiness. And so I asked myself, sure, why not? Why not continue doing something that brings me joy, right? That's really what life is all about. And so I decided to continue that one here, and I appreciate if you listen to this, if you watch it. I will be posting this conversation on my feed at the end. And so if you don't have time to stay for the whole thing, that I will try to keep less than an hour. That's something that I learned from doing the lives on the digital magazines account. You can always go back to my personal account and watch it. So this is the first episode. I will actually name the space. The name is Intentional Break, and you guys know that I'm all about being intentional. I'm all about purpose, and so I thought, why not, right? Intentional Break is such a perfect name for this space that I'm trying to create in this community, just because it's so important to just take a break and have meaningful conversations and just take a break to be still and just connect with people. And so that's really why I thought that name was perfect for this space. Sorry, somebody just tried to call me. That's why one paused. So I will request our guest for tonight. Her name is Amber Booth-McCoy, and I will just request her on here, and I will actually wait to give an introduction after she gets on here. So let me call her. Okay, Amber, I know you're watching, so there you go. Hi.
Hello.
How are you? I love your makeup. I didn't even have time to put on makeup. I just got out of the shower. I was trying to run, not be late.
Well, I refuse to be anywhere on camera where I don't have a full face of makeup on.
You're beautiful though, so I'm sure you were still being fine.
Well, thank you. And thank you for having me.
Of course, it's such an honor to have you here tonight. So for those who don't know, I'm going to go ahead and give a little bit of an introduction about you. So for those who don't know, this is Amber Booth-McCoy, and she's actually a diversity specialist and the CEO and founder of the Diversity Booth Inc., which is a diversity and inclusion consulting firm. Amber actually wrote 2 articles, but one of them is my favorite, and we're gonna touch on those tonight. For the magazine, for My Life Centrals magazine, and I thought it's one of them actually I keep in my personal documents. And I loved it. I truly did. And so I think it's so important to go back to it. And, whenever you lose your center and whenever we have a lot of stuff going on, everything that's going on in the country, I think it's so important to go back to those meaningful pieces and meaningful content to, you really remind yourself your purpose and being intentional. And so I love that. So I wanted you to know that I actually downloaded it and keep it in my personal documents. And so
That means a lot. I really appreciate that. That means a whole lot. I don't get to write as much as I would love to, and so when I do, I'm really excited about it. So thank you.
Yeah, it was awesome. You're such a great writer. I don't know if you want to add to anything. If you just want to go ahead and introduce yourself, talk a little bit about you.
Okay. My name is Amber Booth-McCoy. I am the CEO of a diversity consulting firm called the Diversity Booth, as well as the manager of intercultural education at the University of Arkansas for Medical Sciences.
That's awesome.
So all that said, essentially my entire life is spent creating spaces and making spaces for others. That's what I love to do. And then outside of that, I am just mama. I'm
Yeah,
mama and sister and wife and friend. And those spaces to me mean just as much as anything that I can do personally. I mean,
absolutely.
professionally.
Absolutely, and we're going to touch on that. I whenever I was writing the questions for this interview, I was like, besides the work that she does, which is awesome, she's a mother. She actually has a full-time job. Like,
Man.
she's a wife. Like, I want to touch on that too because sometimes it's overwhelming, especially for us women. Like, there's so many expectations in society, and whenever you meet somebody that's just like rocking it, and it's kind of just like so intentional about her time and what she does, I was like, we need to talk about this also. So we'll touch on that. Something that we're just gonna go ahead and start. Something that stood out with me, or to me, whenever I was looking through your website, was this quote that seems to be like instilled in society. Like, I've heard that quote so many times, which is great minds think alike. But you actually said on your website, great minds do not think alike. They seek and include the ones that differ. That
Mm-hmm.
differ. Is that how you pronounce
It
it?
is. It is. And even after that, I added to it. Great minds not only don't think alike, but the greatest of minds seek out and include the ones who differ.
Yeah, differ. That's how you pronounce it. I'm sorry.
Mhm.
Foreigner problems.
No, differ or differ. Both of
Yeah,
them mean
I
the same
wasn't
thing in
sure.
this case.
I wasn't sure. Foreigner language problems. I love that. So, like I said, this quote seems to be breaking away from everything that we hear in society. Every
Mhm.
time you hear somebody that has the same idea as you usually tend to connect a little bit more, and you're like, oh my gosh, like great minds, right? But what happens when you meet somebody that thinks different or that has a different background, has had different experiences? Like, what happens? How do we react towards that, right? Like, sometimes
Mhm.
it's hard because you're being challenged. How you grew up, all your beliefs, all of that is challenged when you meet somebody that's different. So, do you just want to expand a little bit on that? I'm,
Sure.
I'm so interested on like hearing your opinion about this.
So we do have these ubiquitous sayings like great minds don't think alike, or peas in a pod, or birds of a feather, and things that promote sameness. And not only just promote sameness, but they fuss, if you will, about when people stick out. Like sticking out like a sore thumb means that you're not fitting in, right? But for many, many people, blending in isn't an easy thing to do. And so, not just when I think about great minds that don't think alike, that's when the problem solving happens.
Right.
We do like people that are similar to us, like you were mentioning. That's called affinity bias. We all have affinity bias. It's kind of like if there are any Geminis watching right now, I love you. You are amazing. And it
Tara's
does
right here.
and it doesn't mean that the other zodiacs aren't awesome, but we like things that are similar to ourselves.
Right.
But if I'm stuck on a problem and everybody around me is like me, guess what they're going to be? They're going to be stuck on a problem.
Right.
So being able to kind of pause and question when things are different from us, being able to acknowledge that if everybody around me is like me, well, then I'm putting myself in a box. I'm not only not getting the best from myself, but I'm not getting the best from those around me. So I like being able to remind us that great minds don't think alike, but that the greatest of problems that have ever been solved, ever in the history of humanity came from when people of different minds got together. Different experiences, different backgrounds, different voices, different cultures, different everything.
Are you still there? Okay, there you go. I kind of lost you
Yes.
for a minute.
Oh.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I love what you said about, when we see something that's kind of similar to us, we usually tend to connect with it a little bit faster because
Mm-hmm.
I think it creates like a safe space for us.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I will say, although that's amazing and that's great, I will say sometimes when you tend to put yourself in safety places, you don't grow, right?
You
Like,
do not.
growth happens when you put
When you're
yourself
uncomfortable.
right, when you're uncomfortable, when you put yourself in
Mm-hmm.
uncomfortable situations, because that allows you to like challenge yourself. And when you
Yep.
challenge yourself, when you learn something that you didn't know before, that's really when you grow and you get to be the best version of yourself.
I think
So
about it like the gym. Like I don't normally go to the gym until my pants don't fit, right? So it's not until that is uncomfort that makes me say, oh, I got to do something different.
right.
If we're going to be intentional about inclusivity, if we're going to be intentional about becoming whoever our best self is, it's not going to be comfortable in doing so. It's
Right.
going to be, but people often say this thing, they're like, lean into discomfort. Don't you lean into it, because if you lean into something, you can lean back out of it. But if you embrace the discomfort, like if you think about embracing it like this, it's not as easy to get away from when it's uncomfortable.
Right, right. And I also think, and you said it's easier to blend in. Um, that's hard too, also, because, let's say, we're talking about something that I don't agree with, and
Hmm.
there's a group of people that they all agree, and I'm the only one in my mind, like, well, I don't agree. It's hard to be the one that's different,
Yep.
and so you tend to shut yourself down. You tend to,
Yep.
tell yourself, like, well, maybe something's wrong with, like, maybe I need to agree with them, and you just go, with the flow, and you're like, yeah, I agree, but really, you're not really showing your true self, and you're not being respectful to yourself, and it's kind of like an abuse that you're doing,
That
right,
is.
to your own person. And later on, I think, how does that make you feel? Like, you feel anxiety, and you feel you don't want to go do that work that you with those people. All this, like, unconscious things start to happen in your
And you're not
mind.
going to bring your full self next time. So
Absolutely.
like we are all multidimensional beings, and if you aren't bringing your full self, or you're not comfortable enough to bring your full self, then you're not going to offer those parts of yourself that can be, you know what I mean, that can be seen as sticking out. But I
Absolutely.
will say that I encourage people to take space. And I mean, like, when you say the uncomfortable thing, what you're doing, one, is putting yourself in just relationship with that space. Being in a just relationship with spaces, in relationships, and in conversations is a very different dynamic. And it's going to be uncomfortable at first. But I like to think of it as, when I say taking up space, I like to come into a space and I want to take up so much space that three people can sit down next to me. That's how much space I want to take up.
I love that.
And
That's
those people, they get to take up so much space that three people can sit down next to them. And the more space we take up, the free, or the more that everyone is able to be their multidimensional self.
I
Like,
love that.
every single time you are your authentic and intentional multidimensional self in a space, you have given license for everyone else to do the same.
I love that.
So
I,
take up space.
Right. And it makes me think too, like, whenever you travel, right? Like, whenever you go to different places that you weren't used to. I always use my own example. Like, I grew up in Venezuela until I was 18 years old, and I moved here to go to school. So much different. I'm from the Caribbean. Like, I'm from an island. I had
Mm-hmm.
never experienced winter in my 18 years of life. I moved here in 2013. I never swum in a lake before, right? Like, it was always ocean. Like, just little things like that. Never experienced Thanksgiving, nothing. I was so out of my comfort zone. What did I do the first 3 months that I was here? I was calling my mom, like, I want to go back. Like, I
Right?
don't like this. Like, this is too much for me. Even though I came and I already knew English because I studied it at home, I kept thinking, I don't know how I could do this without learn. Like, even now, knowing English, I don't know if I can still do it. And there's people that don't even speak
Mm.
English. Like, I couldn't. It was like,
Mm-hmm.
it's so hard. I just wanted to go back, right? Like, I just wanted to quit. I just wanted to grab my stuff and be like, see ya,
All
America.
right,
Bye-bye.
right.
I'm going back to my
It's too
country.
much. I gotta go.
Right.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But what happened after, my mom was like, we did so much for you to be there. So you're going to stay there. You're going to finish college. I am so glad that I did and I stayed. I have grown so much as a person, and like my understanding of the world and different
Mm-hmm.
cultures and everything has expanded so big and so much that I would not be the person that I am today if it wasn't because I went through that, that hard kind of trying to get used to transition experience. And so I love that. I totally agree. I actually, my husband laughs about me because or he laughs at me because he always tells me, like, when I meet somebody that's totally different, I get excited. I'm like, oh my gosh, do you want to come over? Like, let's go have
Yes.
coffee. Like, that's when I get so excited. And I'm like, I really want to interview you. Like, let's talk. And it's funny because when we meet somebody that's different than us, and he's with me, he's literally like, oh no. Like, he tells the person, like, get ready. She's about to ask
I
you
say I
some
collect people.
questions.
I collect people. It's what I do. I collect them and I keep them, especially if they are different. Like, please
I
let me
love
have
that.
you.
I love that. I love
Hmm.
that. So I think this is a great segue to our next question. You encourage people to go from asking who's at the table to asking who's not at the table that needs to be. Just talk a little bit about, you just mentioned intentional inclusivity. If you just want to
Hmm.
talk a little bit more about that, what does that really mean?
So, intentional inclusivity, and even to that statement, I encourage people to move from asking who's at the table to asking who's not at the table that needs to be at the table, and did they get detailed instructions to the location of the table, and upon arrival, a chair and a microphone. A lot of times that we often think in spaces that diversity begets inclusion, that if you have different people around the table who maybe look differently or maybe they're from different backgrounds, that that means that you've been inclusive, and it doesn't.
Absolutely.
Intentional inclusivity is where you are not just being or looking for tokens. Token is where you are looking for a certain type of identity. Like, let's say you say, oh, we need a Black woman at this table.
Just to
And
check
then
a box, just
and
to
then
check it off.
and any old Black woman or do, or any
Right.
old Latina woman will do, and that's not okay,
Right.
right? Whereas if you're saying we need a Black woman who is specific to understanding diversity, who has had a proven track record, that is called targeting. So there's a difference between tokenism and targeting. And then adding to that, that it's not just about being diverse, but equitable. If I've invited people to the table, essentially I am a cultural diplomat, if you will, right? Like
I love that.
that's who we are. And so you need to make sure that upon that person arriving, that they know they have just as much right to not only be there, but to speak and share as everyone else around that table. That's what intentional inclusivity looks like.
I love that.
And if you want to, I guess, an easy way to remember diversity, equity, and inclusion, here's what I use. Diversity is the playlist. If you tell everyone we're going to create a playlist with your favorite song, all right? Equity is making sure that everyone got a chance to add their favorite song and that everyone has access to the playlist. Inclusion is that feeling you get when your favorite song is played. You know how like you're listening to something, you're like, oh,
Yes,
that's my jam.
absolutely,
And
absolutely.
and even if you're playing, it's your favorite song, and you're like, and I can see that smile on your face when your favorite song is being played, that is inclusivity. So again, diversity, that's the playlist, making sure that we have a bunch of songs. Equity is making sure everybody got to add to the playlist at least one song. And then inclusion is the feeling you get when that song is played.
I love that. That's such a, I love that. I have never heard it like that. And that's so easy to understand, right? Because a lot of, like you said, a lot of people say, no, I'm a diverse person, you know, like
Mm-hmm.
I have like Black friends, or I have
Uh-huh.
white friends, or I
Right.
have Asian friends. Honey, that doesn't mean
It
you're
doesn't.
being inclusive. Like, that
It
doesn't
doesn't.
mean you're not, you're not racist, or that. Do you allow them to speak their minds? Do you respect them when they do? Do you try to
Do you check
understand
in
them?
with them? Do you
Right,
check
right,
in with them about the things that you don't know? I do
right.
not know everything about being a Latina woman. I do not know everything about being a Muslim woman. I do not, but when I check in with my friends, when I ask them questions and things that are important to them, it may look as simple as, how may I support you?
Right.
How can I support you as a friend? And it could be like, Amber, every year you schedule something during Diwali. Stop doing that. And I'm like, oh, snap. I didn't know what Diwali was. You know what I
Right,
mean? Like asking them, like,
right,
oh, okay, it's not Halloween, Dia de los Muertos. Like, tell me about that. How can I celebrate with you? Like, there are ways to do
right.
that.
And
Mhm.
taking responsibility for, I guess, your behavior and your words. I think a lot of people are so scared to say the wrong thing that they
Mhm.
don't say anything at all, which is also
Mhm.
not helping, right? So even if you do speak and you say the wrong thing, just apologize. Like, we're
That's
human,
it.
we're not perfect. I do want to talk about, and I just want your opinion. I think right now we are in this like time, especially with social media and technology, of like the canceling
Mhm.
society, or I guess community or whatever. Like, if you say the wrong thing once, it's like you're the devil for the rest of
Right.
your life. Doesn't matter what you do. I don't agree with that. I don't know what your opinion. we're humans. We don't know everything. I'm so
We do not.
ignorant on so many topics that, you know, I couldn't even tell you. And, you know, I want to learn though. So how to, you know, let's say I said something wrong tonight on this
Mm-hmm.
live. Am I going to be condemned for the rest of my life? I just apologize, right? Like
Right.
you're honest. And of course it's not like, oh, I'm sorry. No, like, of course you have to be honest about it. But I think opening up and really saying, hey, I don't understand what you're going through. Like, I'm sorry
That's
for
it.
that comment, but I really do want to understand. I really do want to help you. Like, what can I do? We should just talk a little bit about that.
I
Like,
can.
what do you think about that?
So, a couple of things. One, I think that I am not for cancel culture. I am for growth and accountability, allowing people to get it wrong and then holding them accountable after they know that that was wrong, right?
Right.
And two, I talk to individuals about what I call cultural McDonald's, right?
What is that?
And I'm going to tell you. So we allow McDonald's to get your order wrong every time. They don't give you a straw. You ask for napkins and they give you salt and pepper.
They
You
don't have
ask for a
cheese to your
biscuit.
burger.
They don't have cheese. The ice cream machine is always down. And you know what we do? We show up the next day ready to let them get it wrong all over again.
Absolutely.
If we keep in mind that we're going to get it wrong, culture humility is where we allow each and every person to be the owner of their own experience, knowing and acknowledging that only they are the expert in their experience. So, because I don't know everything, I'm going to have blind spots and I'm going to get it wrong. But just like that cultural McDonald's, if I show up the next day, even after I got it wrong, ready to get it wrong again, because today I might get it right, then that is how we make change.
I love that.
Um, Being willing to acknowledge not only that we're going to get it wrong, but that there has to be a commitment to lifelong learning.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are so many different, if you will, identities, there's so many different lived experiences. I encourage people to look for what I call windows and mirrors. And it is a term that I got from the SEED program. But windows are if someone's sharing about their life and you do not have a point of reference. You cannot see yourself in that. You can't see yourself reflected or you can't identify with that experience. That's a window for you. They provided a window into their life. If you are able to see yourself in a story that someone is sharing, you can see your reflection. That's a mirror for you.
Right.
So being honest with yourself about the windows and mirrors and then constantly looking for those is a way to humanize the human experience even when it's not your own.
I love that.
That is a way to share with other people, to be able to learn, affirm, and support the lived experiences of others, and then being able to like look at them against your own and look at how yours is different from theirs.
I
And
love
then the last part that I'll even add to that is we don't know everything, but if there is an identity and if there is a culture or something you want to learn about, there's so much literature. There is so many books. There are so many things that we can learn about academically, and individuals are one of them.
Right.
So you got it wrong this time. Maybe you said wife or husband when you should have said spouse, partner, or mate.
Mm-hmm.
Do the reading. Put the ownership of that learning on you and not the person that has that identity.
Right.
A lot of times when we have people with marginalized identities, they spend so much time educating others that, you know what I mean, like they can't even live. They're spending so much time telling you what not to say and what to do when you can do some of that reading and learning on your own.
Right, right. I now that you're talking about that, I want to go a little bit more into more of a complicated situation. And so let's not even say, let's say we may have sort of, you know, may look a little bit the same. Oh, I haven't even asked you before. How do you feel? Okay, so for those who don't know, so we were going to do this live yesterday and we had to push it back to today because she didn't feel good. So just tell me, like, I see you, you look
I'm good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I feel much better today than I did yesterday. And I rested this morning, so I'm
That's
good.
awesome. Okay, just wanted to make sure. I forgot. That was something I had on my mind to ask you at the beginning, and I forgot. I got so excited.
Thank you.
So going back to the conversation, you know, let's say we look kind of similar. Let's say that we may come from the same place. And I will speak for myself. So whenever this whole situation was happening with politics and stuff, you know, looking at social media can be really, really toxic. You can be carried away with everything that you see. by your like from your family members or your friends or the news, whatever. I was one of those people. Like, I found that I was having so much anxiety, and like arguing with people about politics and stuff. And later on, I was having a conversation with my husband, and he was like, Claret, like, why are you doing this? Like, you're so much better than that. Like, you don't have to fall into an argument. Like, you usually respect people's opinions. Like, what's happening, right? And so it's easy for us to sit here, especially for me, and say, yeah, let's include everybody. Let's respect everybody's opinions. But when it comes down to it, it doesn't, it's a conversation between people that look the same or maybe have had a little bit of similar background. It's harder, because you're like, listen, why are we disagreeing on this? You're like me. And so can you talk about that, right? Like, it's so hard. What are some tools that you can give to people when it comes to disagreeing on like politics or just general topics that have nothing to do with like how you look or your culture or anything like that?
So that is a multifaceted answer. A couple of things. One, there are things that often get pulled into parties and politics that have nothing to do with parties and politics.
Right. Everything right now.
So civil rights and human rights issues are not about parties and politics. So there are some conversations in which I'm not going to engage. I think, remember I talked about being in just relationships with those spaces. I'm reminded of a James Baldwin quote that I absolutely love. And it says, we can disagree and still love each other unless your disagreement is rooted in my oppression and my denial of humanity and right to exist. So that's not a disagreement.
Right.
If the disagreement that you're talking about is whether we should incarcerate 65% of Black people, that's not just a disagreement. That's not just about criminals, right?
Right.
So there are certain things on which, one, I'm not going to take up that argument because it's too much in that moment for me to even have that conversation in an educated way without allowing all of my passion and hurt to
so you
through.
wouldn't engage in that, because I think like I had a lot of those conversations and it was so hard for me to
and what did it do
anything.
To your energy? And what did it do to your energy?
Yeah, I was feeling like so much anxiety afterwards. I felt like crap. Like, I just felt like I don't know, I didn't grow from that conversation. And so, it even made me like talk about it with my husband and other people because I was so anxious, and it definitely didn't bring the best in me. And I will be very open about that. Like, I'm a human, I'm not perfect. Like, sometimes I let my emotions control me. So basically you're saying, just don't engage.
Don't engage if you know that you're going to reach a point to where you're not able to teach because it is something that's so passionate for you in that moment, right? So yes. 2, only people in the middle are where I'm going to focus my effort. If there is a subject that one person is all the way over on this end and the other person is all the way over here, they're probably not going to meet in the middle anytime soon.
That they're not willing to learn either.
They're not, exactly. So if there is an argument I see, I'm only focusing on that person who isn't all the way made up. That's the person you can sway. Somebody that has already this is their belief, they think that this is wrong or this is right, you're not going to get that person. That's going to take much more effort. So find the person that is already in the middle, shoot for that person. Remember to protect your energy because you can't fight every fight.
Absolutely.
And then being able to not digest everything. Some things are like that cartoon fish. You remember when we watched cartoons maybe growing up and Bugs Bunny would eat the whole fish and pull out the bones?
Yeah.
Some conversations are just like that. You process what you can and you pull out the rest because everything isn't for you.
Right. I love that. I love all the little messages you have at the end. They're like perfect ending. I love that. Do you have okay, well, I guess we can talk about this now since before we switch topics. So in one of the articles, that's my favorite article, you give 5 tips towards intentional inclusivity. The first one is you talk about working towards cultural humility instead of cultural competence. What does that mean?
Cultural competence is a word that came out a couple of decades ago. And basically, it says that you're just trying to learn these things so that you are knowledgeable about cultures, right? But you're going to miss something. You're
Right.
never going to know all that is needed to know about a culture or an identity,
Right.
and culture changes. Culture humility is a commitment to continuing to learn, to allowing each person to be the owner of their own experience, and to being able to be an advocate for those who may not be able to advocate for themselves sometimes. Culture humility is where you acknowledge that you're not going to get it right all the time. You're going to make some mistakes. But like cultural McDonald's, like we talked about, you show back up ready to get it wrong again.
Right. Right. I love that. The second one is commit to experiencing people. Oh my gosh, I love this one. This I love commit to experiencing people and not populations. That's like
Mm-hmm,
do not stereotype. It's so easy to
mm-hmm,
stereotype. So like the human brain, I read about this. And I don't know if you will agree. The human brain. Oh yeah, you base yeah. So you said it is natural to group or pair like things. Our brains do this unconsciously to assist us with processing the massive amounts of data every second. So it's like safety for us, right? Like
it is.
we do it unconsciously. How do we not do this? Like
So
what would you say?
So the thing is, our brains do process things quickly. In fact, your brain is trying to process about 11 million pieces of stimuli every single second. And those shortcuts help us to kind of screen out things and to focus on what we want to focus. The problem is those shortcuts are often informed by stereotypes and other biases, right? And so we can put people in these boxes. Being willing to slow down and ask yourself questions, to question what you think you know, right? When we say commit to people and not populations, very often we say, oh, I want to learn more about, and then you go learn about a people or you learn about an identity, and then you think you know everything, right?
Yes.
But the problem is that we turn those groups into monoliths. The
Mm-hmm.
same way all Black people are not the same, all Afro Latinas are not the same, all people in Venezuela are not the same, right?
Yeah.
All people in Mexico are not the same. Like
Right.
allowing yourself to get to know individuals and learning about them. That assists in breaking down stereotypes, but you have to commit to getting to know people that are not like yourself. Like that
Right.
has to be the intentional part.
Right. I love that. That's so beautiful. The next one is error. Blah, 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 blah. My English tonight. They're correct at the moment.
Hmm.
What does that mean? So you say we're never going to get it all right all the time. We actually just talked a little bit about this.
Hmm.
What do you think about that?
You know when something doesn't land correctly. Like when someone says a joke and maybe you can realize that, oh, it wasn't funny. Or if you said something and you realize that it has hurt someone's feelings or it has what I call impacted someone in some way. First of all, we recognize that intent does not equal impact. You meant something as what I call benign as Bruce Banner. I don't know if you're a Marvel fan, as benign as
My
Bruce
husband is
Banner,
actually.
but it landed on someone like the Hulk. Like they didn't mean it the way it did, but it hit you like the Hulk.
Mhm.
Apologize.
Right.
Or you can say, I apologize. Did something I say, impact you? Or did I misstep somewhere? Ask in that moment. If you know that you said something and you specifically know what you said wrong, apologize.
Right.
When you don't do that, the other person then has to carry that hurt. And then you have to carry the knowledge that you said something that, impacted someone and you didn't get to discuss it.
Right.
So a long time ago, my mother gave my sister and I the ouch rule. If someone says something to you and it is hurtful, you say ouch. It gives you a chance to acknowledge that you've been impacted some way. It gives the other person an opportunity to know that you've been impacted, and then you can at least discuss it in that moment. Either way, neither of you has to carry it with you. Like you
Right.
can unpack it in that moment. So go with ouch. I use the ouch rule in my home. I use it with my friends. I use it at work all the time.
Yeah, I was. It's funny you touched on that because I was about to ask you like what's the other the opposite way, like what do we do if we are hurt by
Hmm.
somebody that we know they didn't
Ouch.
mean right, like
Ouch.
they didn't mean it, and because sometimes like people, you're close to people that they're not bad people,
Hmm.
that they may say comments that hurt you, but sometimes it's hard, like to talk about it because you don't want to start an argument, or you don't want to seem like, oh, I'm just like a
Right.
crybaby, like I'm sensitive.
But that's okay. It's okay to share that you have been hurt. It doesn't make the other person wrong. It is like the ouch rule gives you the opportunity to do just that. When you say ouch, you're not saying that they've done anything wrong intentionally. It's kind of like if someone were to trip you on accident, you would still be hurt even if it was an accident, right?
Right, right.
The ouch rule is just like that. You're simply saying, hey, you may not have meant to trip me, but you tripped me, and this is how or this is why. And then allow yourself and the other person the opportunity to discuss it.
I love that. Ouch. I'm gonna start
Ouch.
using that
You
with
can
you.
even be dramatic with it, like ouch.
Yeah.
Like, ouch.
I love that. I love that. Okay, the next one is when advocating or seeking to be an ally, recognize your privilege. I would like your take on that.
So, a lot of times when we hear about inequities, just as humans, we want to do something. We want to create change. We want to make a better tomorrow for others. And if we go into that space, we need to recognize our privilege and the power dynamics in that space. For instance, as a cisgender, meaning I identify with the sex in which I was born, Black woman, who, if I go and I say, I want to make sure that I'm standing up for trans rights, I want to make sure that when it comes to gender expression, that I'm being an ally. When I go into that space, I have to acknowledge, because that's not my fight, because that is not a group in which I identify, they are the authority. I am here to assist, which means that the voices that I center need to be theirs. If someone's supposed to have a microphone, it ain't me.
Right.
If someone outside of the group says, Amber, I know you've been doing lots of work with, in the trans community and blah, 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 blah. Will you come and speak on, I can, but do you mind if I bring so-and-so with me? Because that's not my identity. That's not my fight. So making sure that I recognize my place as an ally is very, very important. Making sure that I'm centering the voices that need to be centered is very important.
Right. I love that. And to touch a little bit more on that, I think too, when you are around a lot of people that, are different than you, but you've been friends with them for a long time, you think a subject, a lot because you've been friends with them for a long time, you've known them for a long time. It's easy to kind of take that fight as yours, right? Like, I have a Latin friend who's been struggling with immigration. I know what, even though that's great and that support, like, thank you for supporting us. How do you feel about that? Like, do you think sometimes it's hard for people to acknowledge the fact that they have a little bit, like, do you think my question is, do you think everybody has a little bit of privilege? And
everybody has some type of privilege.
Right. I love that. Right. Okay. That's what I needed you to say.
Everybody has some type of privilege. And even if you just think about the various dimensions of or what we call the physical dimensions, if you woke up and when you got ready to leave, if you didn't have to think about whether there'd be a ramp available for you, that's a privilege. All right. You have able-bodied privilege. If you are going to go listen to a presentation and you didn't have to wonder whether they were going to have it in the language that you can understand, that's a privilege for you. If you are going to go to the restroom and you're not concerned that people are going to be looking as you go to the bathroom, that's a privilege for you. If you're going throughout your day and you're not concerned that someone is going to be watching you because of your skin color, that's a privilege for you. There are several different types of privileges, and being able to acknowledge and recognize those privileges first starts with our self-work, but you cannot assist or be an ally to anyone else until you understand yourself. You have to be willing to do the work for yourself and on yourself first.
I love that. Like, the work starts with us, right? Like, we're always looking out and we're always telling people what to do, what to say, what not to do, what not to say, when really it's just as easy as, like, looking within, like, looking inside you. I love that. The last one is silence is a collision. It really speaks for itself, but please expand on that.
If you see something and you say nothing, you have colluded with what was said. You are in conjunction with whatever was bad. It comes from my favorite quote by Eli Wiesel, who is a Holocaust survivor. And he says, "We must take sides. Neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim. Silence encourages the tormentor, never the tormented. Sometimes we must interfere." So he goes on to say that wherever people are persecuted for their race, religion, gender, all of that, that space at that moment becomes the center of the universe. And I think that that's a powerful thing to think about, the center of the universe. If I hear something wrong and I say nothing, I miss my chance to make the world safer for someone else.
Right.
If I am allowing things to persist that I know this isn't right, but I just am like, oh, I don't have the time to fight that fight, or I don't feel like arguing, so I'm just not going to say anything, then I've made the oppressor the winner. I have told the person that is being tormented, I've told the person that is being harmed, you're not important enough for me to stand up for you.
Absolutely.
When sometimes it's just the voice that's needed. Sometimes it is just saying, that's not okay. And
Right.
kind of, you were speaking earlier to people not wanting to say the wrong thing. And a lot of times that's why people don't say anything. They don't want to get it wrong, or they're like, well, maybe there's more that I don't know. But you know what we do know? We know when someone isn't okay. And we know when something is wrong. And you don't have to have all the words that are so right. You don't have to be an inclusion specialist or a diversity specialist. All you have to do is be willing to say, I see you. How can I support you? And that wasn't okay.
Right.
That's it. What comes
Right.
from the heart reaches the heart.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, it's like you said, like you don't even have to engage with the oppressor or the person that, abused
Nope.
that certain individual. You can just go towards that person and say, hey, like I saw what happened and I'm so
That's
sorry.
it.
How can I help you? You
That's
don't
it.
have to, because I've seen some stuff too that I've been like scared to like say something to that,
Mm-hmm.
whoever's being violent or abusive.
Mm-hmm.
But I do go to the other person and I said, hey, like here's my number. Call me if you need me as a witness.
That's it.
Call me if so it's really as easy as that. You don't have to engage with the violent person or the abusive,
No.
person. You can literally just walk towards that person and say, I saw what happened. I'm here.
I saw this. And then even if it is, you were talking about social media. You don't have to fight every social media battle, but you know what you do have? You have authority over your own page. So you may never say anything to that person who, said all of these things, but you can post on your page things that you feel counteract that. Like if you think about it kind of in this weight of good and bad, just put things on your page that are good. Put things on
Right.
your page that are affirming.
Right. I love that. Okay, the last question, switching topics now. Thank you so
Mm-hmm.
much for sharing all that knowledge. I will save this Instagram live and I will post it on my feed. There's so much like goodness and I don't know if you're still there.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. It like kind of like paused it a little bit. There's so much goodness and awesome quotes and all this knowledge that I have to save this conversation and I will post it. But the last question is what we were talking about at the beginning. Is you're truly an inspiration for everybody. Whenever I was researching about you, I'm just like, oh my God, she does it all. Like you're, what I said earlier, like you're a mother, you are a businesswoman, you work full time, you're a wife, you're a sister, you're, your daughter. How do you do all of that? Like, how do you manage your time? And what advice would you give women who want to start their own careers or businesses or, but seem to say, I don't have the time. Like, I don't know how to do it.
Okay.
What's something that, to end this conversation, what's something that you would say to them?
One, to judge yourself by yourself. Like, make your goals and make them realistic. A lot of times the goals that we set are based on what someone else is already doing. Well, they're able to do this, and we do this comparison game. And so in that, comparison can become the thief of joy. And you forget to celebrate your small wins because you're busy comparing them to someone else's larger wins, right? So make your goals and make them, and then remember that when you make them, when you make these timelines, you can move them. I think
Right.
that, a lot of times we're like, oh, I need to do this by 30. I need to do this by 35, or I need to,
Yeah.
you set that timeline.
Right.
So change it. If it's
Right.
that 30, just erase it and put that 5 there. Make it 35.
Right.
Two, um, we talk a lot about balance. And to me, I think balance can be this myth. And that means that everything is happening on the same day. Like you named a lot of different titles. I'm a manager of education, a CEO, a sister, a mother, a wife, and all of those things, while I may be all of those things, they don't look the same on every day.
Right.
And
Priorities.
and some days I get them wrong, and some days I get them right. Some days I'm not the best mom, even on days where I was the best CEO, right? So acknowledging that there is no one way to balance.
Right.
It's not about making sure that I did this on this week or did this at this time. To me, it is acknowledging that this week I did a lot of work. I need to make sure I do a lot of mommy check-in. That's how I balance that, right? Like it's not, it's looks different by the week. And
Right.
then two, being willing to say when you're not okay. Honoring your calendar. And what I mean by honoring your calendar is allowing yourself grace. I will put back to back meetings on my calendar because it's like I have all these things I need to get done.
Mhm.
And then I remind myself that my dad told me a long time ago, she who does everything does nothing well.
Oh my gosh, that's so powerful. I feel like you're saying that to me. And that's I've been trying to slow down and really just one thing at a time, right? Like instead of trying to do everything
That's it.
at once. I love that quote.
She who does everything does nothing well. So pause, giving yourself and giving myself the grace. A lot of times we're like, oh, I know they must be dealing with a lot and I'm going to give them a little space and I'm going to that. But how often do you do that to yourself? Give yourself the same grace that you give other people. And then the last thing, cotton balls and glass balls. That's what I called. I have, I feel like I'm juggling at all times, all these different things. Well, some of them are glass balls. Glass balls are things that if you break them, they're going to shatter and people hear them, right?
Mm-hmm.
These are things that can be detrimental to either you or they're attached to other people.
Right.
Cotton balls, if you drop a cotton ball on the floor, no one's going to hear that. No
Right.
one's going to. You're juggling glass balls and cotton balls. Figure out. There may be some things that you labeled as glass balls that really are cotton balls.
Right.
There may be some times where you have so many glass balls that you can't fit the cotton balls in your hand, and that's okay too. Decide what you want to juggle, reprioritize as much as you like, and sometimes you may need to throw glass balls to make yourself
Right.
feel better. You just need
Right.
to just
Right.
all of it,
Release.
just to release and be okay with that.
Right. Allow yourself to be a human, right? Like we're not perfect. I think
Nope,
with this society, especially also social media can be really deceiving. You see everybody posting all their wins and all their highlights and
that's
everything.
it.
It's like it's not reality.
Nope,
That's not every day of their lives.
nope,
We only post about our wins or awesome days. But that doesn't mean that we don't struggle, we don't cry, we
nope.
don't yell, right? Like it's so important. I love that that was the last thing you said, because I
Okay,
think
it's
that's
one
oh
last.
yes, go ahead.
This year has been a different year for everybody. Being willing to share and know that it's okay to not be okay. That's the last thing. It is okay to not be okay and to share when you're not okay. A lot of times, women, especially women that are professional and often, women of color, we don't share when we're not okay. And we get in these silos and we often isolate and we need to reach out. So that is the last thing that, as far as that is concerned, to be okay when you are not okay. Know that eventually you'll get back to a level of okay
Right.
and that it's okay to share when you're not okay.
I love that. That's basically like it's okay to just like pause, right? And be still for a second and cry and ask for help and talk about it and like really
All of it.
raise your feelings. That's I love that this is like the way that we're ending this with this message, and it's like
it's fine to just, you don't have to do everything.
Nope.
You can, it's okay if you take one day off and you just,
Or
you
2 days,
or
or
2 days,
3 days.
right, or a
At
week,
the beginning of this pandemic, I was so freaked out. I sat in my living room floor crying on an air mattress with like snacks around me, just going like, my sister is a physician, so I was afraid for her, and like I work in a, at a health institution, so I was freaked out. And
right.
I just sat in my living room floor, and my husband and my kids, they're like, "Mom, you need some more juice?"
Yeah,
Like,
I love that.
because mom is just sitting here with tissues. And then after that week, because I did it for like a full week, I told people, I wasn't handling last week well, but I'm here now,
Right,
and
right.
that's okay.
Right, and even, and I would say that you were handling the way that you were supposed to handle it for
The best I
yourself,
could.
right?
That's it.
Like your fears and your emotions, whenever you're sad or scared
Hmm.
or whatever, are just as valid. And when you're happy and you're in an awesome mood, like, we're humans, and it's okay to not
It's
have a
okay.
date, to have a date when you're not okay, right? Like,
Yep.
it's, this space, I named it Intentional Break, and it's for a reason, because like, this is how we're ending this conversation. It's like, it's okay to just pause, and don't wait till you're, breaking down or having,
Yep.
this, like, you're just crying or whatever. Just like, try to take an intentional break when you literally do nothing, you don't care about, like, you're just
That's
like,
it.
self-care, right? Like,
That's it.
I love
Self-care
that.
has nothing to do with productivity. People think sometimes that they need to do self-care so that they can be productive. No, you do self-care because you need to do self-care,
Absolutely.
not so you can do anything else. You do self-care for you.
Absolutely. I love that. Well, thank you so much for being on this space with me. It felt like I've known you for so many years.
And
This
now I
is,
can collect you too.
I
You're
know. Absolutely. Like, we gotta stay in touch.
Yes.
This is what I wanted with this space, to just like take a moment to connect with people and like have intentional conversations. I really, really, at the end of the day, beyond like, what business do you have, or like, what project are you working on, or, I think at the end of the day, relationships or connections
Yes.
is what's most important. Like, to me, like, when I sit down and I have an awesome conversation like the one that I had with you today, like, this is gonna stay with me. All the amazing quotes you gave me tonight, it's what's gonna stay with me, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's what like really helps me grow, I
Self-care.
think, right? Like, it's what helps my mind, like, think about different things. And I thank you for, like, honestly, like, allowing me to interview you, and like, I thank you for taking the time to just talk to me tonight. Like, you really don't know how much of like a
No.
positive impact you had on my night, just because you just sat with me for, I don't even know, like 40, like 30, 40
Well,
minutes.
please know that your energy gave me all the fuel that I need to finish doing all of the work that has to happen for the rest of tonight. So
Oh,
you have gifted me just as much during this time as I have gifted you. Please
I
know that.
love that. And this is the first episode, so you're a special guest because this is the first one.
Yay.
Um, well, thank you so much. So for those who are watching and want to watch the whole thing, I'm about to post it on my feed, so you can always go back and listen to everything or save it. Please follow Amber. She's doing an awesome work with her company, with everything, and just make sure that you're connecting with her. She's opened. She's
I
very
am.
open. I messaged her and I didn't even know her, and she was like, yes, yes, I'll do everything that you need me to. So do not hesitate to ask and connect with her. I think Instagram can be such a positive space. It's really easy for social media to turn really negative, but I think if you're intentional about it, you can make awesome connections,
Okay.
and create a lot of positivity, which is what we're trying to do. All right, that's it. Thank you so much. I will be
Thank
talking
you.
to you. Have a great night. I hope you feel better.
I just
I hope,
thank you for asking.
yeah, and I hope you have